perfect blossom is a rare thing. You could spend your life looking for one, and it would not be a wasted life.
It has been over 2 decades since Edward Zwick took us to 19th century Japan. Released in 2003, The Last Samurai was a massive box office hit, grossing nearly $500 million worldwide. It was a film that captured the world's imagination, combining the star power of Tom Cruise with a story of honor, redemption, and tragedy. But looking back at it today, the film sits in a complicated place. For many, it is a beloved masterpiece, a rare, sweeping epic that Hollywood simply does not make anymore. For others, it is a controversial piece of historical fiction, a film that has been accused of perpetuating the white savior trope and romanticizing a feudal class that was fighting to keep its privilege. So, does The Last Samurai hold up? Is it a respectful homage to Japanese culture, or a Hollywood fantasy that rewrites history? Today, we are going deep. We are looking at the insane production details, the grueling training, the real history of the Satsuma Rebellion, and why this movie remains so polarizing yet so beloved. Let's start with the production, because the scale of this movie is something we need to appreciate in the age of green screen. When you watch The Last Samurai, you feel the mud, the rain, and the weight of the armor. That is because almost everything you see is real. Director Edward Zwick wanted a tactile, grounded feel, which meant they couldn't just film on a soundstage in Los Angeles. Surprisingly, most of the movie was not filmed in Japan. While they did shoot key scenes at the Engyoji Temple in Himeji, specifically the atmospheric temple shots on the mountain, the bulk of the filming took place in New Zealand. The production team found a location in the Taranaki region that perfectly mimicked the Japanese countryside. The mountain you see in the background of the village isn't Mount Fuji. It is Mount Taranaki, a dormant volcano that looks so much like Fuji that it fooled even the Japanese audiences. The village itself was a massive undertaking. Production designer Lily Kilvert and her team didn't just build facades. They built a functioning village. They constructed everything from the ground up, paying attention to the smallest details of Edo period architecture. When you see Tom Cruise walking through that village, he isn't walking through a set, he is walking through a fully realized environment. Then there are the costumes. Costume designer Nangela Dixon, who had just come off working on The Lord of the Rings, faced a monumental task. She and her team created over 2,000 costumes for the film. For the samurai armor alone, they couldn't just rent generic suits. They had to manufacture hundreds of suits of armor that looked historically authentic, but were light enough for stuntmen to fight in. They established a dedicated workshop to hand make the chainmail and the lacing. If you look closely at Katsumoto's armor, you can see the individuality in the design. It wasn't mass-produced, it was character-specific art. But the production design is only half the story. The other half is the physical commitment of the cast, specifically Tom Cruise. We all know Tom Cruise is intense, but his preparation for this role was on another level. He spent nearly a year training before cameras even rolled. He learned Japanese, he learned to ride a horse, and most importantly, he learned kenjutsu, the art of sword fighting. Cruise was adamant about doing his own swordplay. In the scene where Algren is training in the rain and getting beaten into the mud, there are no stunt doubles. That is Cruise taking the hits. There is a famous story from the set involving the mechanical horse used for close-ups. During a fight scene with Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays the fierce sword master Yujio, a mechanical malfunction caused the horse to drop at the wrong moment. Sanada swung his sword at Cruise's neck, and the blade stopped just an inch from his jugular. Sanada, being a master swordsman, managed to pull the strike at the last split second. If he hadn't, cinema history might have looked very different. This dedication to realism extends to the supporting cast. The film brought together some of Japan's finest actors. We have to talk about Hiroyuki Sanada. Before he was in John Wick 4 Shogun, he was here, stealing every scene he was in. His character, Yujio, hates Algren for most of the movie. The arc of their relationship, communicated almost entirely through glares and sword strikes, is one of the most rewarding parts of the film, and of course Ken Watanabe. Before this movie, Watanabe was a well-known actor in Japan, but he was unknown in the West. This role changed everything. He plays Katsumoto with such gravitas and warmth that he earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Watanabe's performance is the anchor of the film. He isn't playing a villain or a caricature. He plays a man who knows his time is ending. There is a deep sadness in his eyes, a recognition that the world is moving on without him. The chemistry between him and Cruz is what sells the movie. It is a relationship built on mutual respect, and it elevates the story from a simple action movie to a character drama. Now, let's pivot to the history, because this is where things get complicated. The Last Samurai is based on the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877. Katsumoto is based on a real man named Seigo Takamori, but the movie takes some massive liberties with the truth. In the film, the samurai are depicted as fighting exclusively with swords and bows against modern howitzers and Gatling guns. It paints a romantic picture of tradition versus technology. The reality was quite different. The real Satsuma rebels were not anti-technology. In fact, Seigo Takamori had previously established modern arsenals and shipyards. During the rebellion, the samurai used guns. Lots of them. They used Sniper and field rifles and artillery. They didn't charge into battle with just swords because they were foolish. They did it only when they ran out of ammunition. The movie frames the conflict as a battle for the soul of Japan, preserving the ancient ways against Western corruption. The historical reality was more about political power and class privilege. The Meiji Restoration had stripped the samurai of their status. They lost their stipends, their right to carry swords in public, and their exclusive right to military service. The rebellion wasn't just about honor. It was about a social class fighting to keep its income and its position in society. Furthermore, the character of Nathan Algren is a complete fiction. There was no American Civil War veteran who trained the Japanese army and then defected to the rebels. The Japanese army was actually trained primarily by the French and the Germans, not the Americans. However, there was a French officer named Jules Brunet who did fight alongside the shogunate troops in an earlier conflict, the Boshin War. His story likely served as a loose inspiration for the character of Algren, but the timeline and the details were heavily altered for Hollywood. This brings us to the biggest criticism the film faces: the white savior narrative. Critics argue that the movie takes a pivotal moment in Japanese history and inserts a white American male to be the center of attention. They argue that Algren's presence is unnecessary and that it reduces the Japanese characters to supporting roles in their own history. There is validity to this. We see the samurai culture largely through Algren's eyes. We learn about Bushido as he learns about it. It is a classic fish, water structure designed to make the culture accessible to a Western audience. But I think calling it a white savior movie misses some of the nuance. Algren does not save the samurai. He does not lead them to victory. He does not teach them a better way to fight. In fact, he is the one who is saved. He is a broken man, an alcoholic suffering from PTSD, who finds peace and purpose through the samurai way of life. The samurai ultimately lose. They are wiped out. Algren's role is that of a witness. He survives to tell the emperor, and by extension the audience, how they lived. He is a vessel for the story, not the savior of it. Interestingly, the reception in Japan was generally very positive. While American critics were debating the cultural appropriation, Japanese audiences appreciated the film. Why? Because it treated their culture with respect. In many Western movies prior to this, Japan was often depicted as a land of ninjas, geishas, and stereotypes. The Last Samurai, despite its historical inaccuracies, took the time to show the philosophy, the aesthetics, and the dignity of the culture. The fact that the Japanese characters were played by actual Japanese actors speaking Japanese was a huge deal in 2003. Ken Watanabe himself defended the film, stating that while it was a fantasy, it captured the spirit of the samurai correctly. It wasn't a history lesson, it was a love letter. Let's talk about the themes that make this movie resonate 20 years later. At its core, The Last Samurai is about the loss of tradition in the face of modernization. In the early 2000s, the world was changing rapidly. The digital age was taking over. Today, that feeling is even stronger. We live in a world of constant noise, distraction, and disposability. The village in the movie represents a fantasy of mindfulness. We watch Algren slow down. We watch him learn to appreciate the silence. The scene where he writes in his journal about the humptiness of the sea speaks to a deep desire in all of us to disconnect from the chaos of modern life and find something real. The film argues that there is value in discipline. Whether it is the discipline of the sword, the tea ceremony, or just the way you wear your clothes, it suggests that how you do something is just as important as what you do. And then there is the music. We cannot talk about the emotional impact of this movie without mentioning Hans Zimmer. This is arguably one of Zimmer's best scores. It avoids the bombastic, heavy horns he is often known for. Instead, it uses taiko drums, flutes, and swelling strings to create a sound that is both epic and intimate. The track, A Small Measure of Peace, is heartbreakingly beautiful. It underscores the tragedy of the ending without being manipulative. It allows the audience to feel the weight of the loss. So, where does that leave us? The Last Samurai is a movie of contradictions. It is a violent war movie that preaches peace. It is a historical film that ignores history. It is a star vehicle for Tom Cruise that is stolen by Ken Watanabe. But it works. It works because it wears its heart on its sleeve. It is sincere. In an era of cynical blockbusters that are constantly winking at the camera, The Last Samurai plays it straight. It believes in honor. It believes in sacrifice. Is it a myth? Yes. It is a romanticized, stylized version of events. But as the movie itself asks in its final moments, is there not value in the myth? The final scene, where Algren presents Katsumoto's sword to the Emperor, delivers the core message. The Emperor asks how he died. Algren replies, "I will tell you how he lived." That line sums up the movie's legacy. It isn't about the accuracy of the death. It is about the inspiration of the life. If you are looking for a documentary on the Meiji Restoration, this is not it. You should read a history book for that. But if you are looking for a piece of cinema that transports you, that makes you feel something profound, and that features some of the best practical filmmaking of the early 2000s, then The Last Samurai is absolutely worth a re-watch. It reminds us that even in a world of howitzers and Gatling guns, there is still a place for the sword. Not as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of the soul. Thank you for watching this deep dive. I want to hear from you. Do you think the historical inaccuracies hurt the film? Or do you think the themes are more important? And where does this rank in Tom Cruise's filmography? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more retrospectives on the biggest movies of the past. Until next time.